Time now to return to Nicola Sturgeon's controversial Gender Recognition Act in Scotland, which will allow people as young as 16 to essentially just declare they're transitioning to a different gender, you know, without medical supervision, without rules and regulations. So they have to prove that they've lived, if it's a trans woman, they have to prove they've lived as a woman for 3 months. I don't even know what that means, but let's find out what my next guest thinks. I've got a fair idea. It is my friend from Standing for Women, Kellie-Jay Keen. Good morning, Kellie-Jay.
Good morning.
So I guess you're all in favour of Nicola Sturgeon's Gender Recognition Act, yeah?
Well, I think if she wants all people in England to want Scottish independence, then yes, I'm all favour for children deciding something quite so catastrophic. But don't let them have a pint of beer or a tattoo. Yeah,
it's a good point. But let's discuss seriously the ramifications of this. Now, you know, you and quite often me, I think we get mistaken for people who are against trans people. We're not. I'm not. I utterly support anybody to do what the hell they want with their lives that make them happy, especially trans people. The vast majority of trans people, decent people who just want to pursue a different path. Good luck to them. But, you know, there are rotten apples in the barrel. And we know what we're talking about. We're talking about alleged trans women who get jobs in women's refuge centres, alleged trans women in male prisons who say, I'm a woman, and get transferred to women's prisons, one of whom went down to a women's prison and promptly raped 2 of the inmates and 1 warden. And also those who want to invade women's spaces, hang around in women's changing rooms nefariously. That's what we're talking about, and women should be protected from that, shouldn't they? This act is a charter for those who would do wrong to women, isn't it?
Well, yeah, look, I think any man, regardless of how he sees himself, entering a woman's space is in there for nefarious reasons, quite frankly. Because if you consider how women feel about men in their spaces, you just wouldn't go in. Decent men, decent people, knowing that they intimidate women, just wouldn't use those spaces. So the differentiation almost isn't between whether or not someone's there with bad intentions or whether somebody pretends to be trans for bad intentions. The idea behind self-ID, and in fact the idea behind this whole sort of prevailing culture, is that they are who they say they are. That's the whole point of self-ID. So it doesn't matter whether or not this person genuinely believes that they're the opposite sex, believes it for 5 minutes, believes it because they have motivations that are of a fetish nature, or it doesn't actually matter. We're in a situation right now, and they will be in Scotland, where anybody is who they say they are. And quite frankly, you and I are not allowed to question that. That's what the police force rainbow lanyards is all about. We are not allowed to question anybody's identity. We have to believe they are whoever they say they are.
I'll tell you why I wanted to get you on, Kellie-Jay, was because I saw a tweet from a trans woman barrister, you know, saying that these objections that we're talking about, or these reservations that we have, you know, about those males who would abuse this in order to invade women's spaces, in order to get into women's prisons, and so on and so forth, get into women's refuge centres for all the wrong reasons. He sort of said, oh, well, this is very rare and it's just anecdotal. Well, I don't care if it's very rare. Laws are, you know, murder's very rare, but we have a law against it in order to discourage people from murdering people. So you know, this is the way they dismiss our concerns by saying, oh, it's rare and anecdotal. That's kind of a counter-argument to what we're saying, is to be dismissed, in my view.
Yeah. I think that particular barrister also sort of said we don't make laws on the basis of a few incidents. Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do.
That's exactly what we do.
Yeah. It's like I say, go on.
Well, I put a seatbelt on every time I drive. Unfortunately, that campaign that convinced me was probably the Jimmy Savile Clunk Click campaign. So maybe it's not the
Clunk
best
clip every
example.
trip, wasn't it? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. But I put a seatbelt on because I've been persuaded that I'm safer when I am behind the wheel of a car with a seatbelt. I've never actually had a particularly bad accident. I've never required a seatbelt. And yet we all wear them. That's why men aren't allowed in women's spaces. It's not because men are terrible humans. It's because some men are pretty terrible and we don't know which ones they are. So fear is also not anecdotal. Women have a healthy sense of fear of men in their spaces. And I think that particular barrister highlighted exactly why we don't want men that call themselves women in our spaces, because they simply don't understand the genuine rational fear that women have of men in our spaces.
I think that left-wing politicians like Nicola Sturgeon and big shock, Mark Drakeford, the First Minister of Wales, made it pretty clear that Wales is going to follow Scotland with its own Gender Recognition Act. I think they think this is progressive. Well, it's not very progressive in terms of women's rights, is it? I mean, it's like people think it's progressive. The NHS thinks it's progressive to call women people with cervixes or people who menstruate or people who get pregnant. That isn't progressive. That is regressive. That is an affront to women's rights, isn't it? Yeah,
I sometimes wonder who they're talking about. So when these politicians talk about gender-neutral spaces or men being allowed to identify as women and use our spaces, I don't know if they've got in mind a genuine spectrum of who those men might be. And I think it's all well and good if we genuinely believed that every single person that claimed to be a woman was some sort of vulnerable, shy, retiring individual who didn't want to make a fuss or get in anyone's way, then, you know, maybe it wouldn't be such an issue. Frankly, I still wouldn't want them in our space. However, that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about a whole different spectrum of men. And many of them, whether they genuinely think they're trans or not, A, they all remain men, but B, they pose the same threat to women as any other man. And to ignore that just simply means that progressive politics is just new age misogyny. That's all that can be explained. In your last piece, you talked about rainbow lanyards. South Wales, where the Welsh Parliament is one of the worst, like the highest spenders for all this rainbow nonsense.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not surprised. I mean, the NHS, you know, it's wokery concerning the issues we're talking about. You know, there's no good comedy on the telly anymore, but I can refer you to the NHS if you want a damn good laugh. And my favourite is that when you go in for an X-ray to an NHS hospital or a clinic, because, of course, women who are pregnant, you know, should be careful about X-rays. So the women always have been asked, you know, before they submit themselves to an X-ray, are you pregnant? Because that could damage your unborn child. Because of this kind of wokery we're talking about, the diktat and law now in the NHS is that everybody has to be asked, you know, in case they're a trans woman or a trans man. And, you know, so you have this image of sort of like 50-year-old builders with beer guts and beards. And this is what happens. They go to... they get these blokes with beards. Well, you know what? Are you pregnant? Yeah, well, take a wild guess. I mean, it's insane, isn't it?
Yeah, it's utterly insane. And that's the kind of funny side of it, right? Because no man is actually going to get really deeply offended. He's just going to think that it's the most ridiculous thing he's ever heard and go home and it's a good story for the pub. I do a phone-in program on my YouTube channel, and a woman phoned who actually goes to a gynecology ward because she's had a gynecologically related cancer. And there's a big black poster on the side. This is also in Wales, and it says, "Trans women are women, get over it." And she has to sit there and, with her.
That's the NHS.
Cancer.
The NHS.
NHS.
Yeah.
It's. I personally find all of that regalia really quite offensive, and it's I have to say, Kevin, I've stopped being polite about it. I will now tell people in the NHS with rainbow lanyards that many women find it quite offensive.
Yeah. For the record, the record, everyone, trans women are trans women. That's what they are. Listen, Kellie-Jay, just before you go, thanks for coming on again. Good to hook up again. We haven't spoken for a while. You know, you're very brave what you do. You know, you put yourself in right in the centre of a firestorm. You're a mum. I think you got, how many kids you got? 4 or something?
4 whole children.
4 whole children. And you're a very brave person with a cervix. Why do you do this? You know, because you could just live you know, you've had trouble with the police, obviously, because you know you could be guilty of hate crimes and all that. Why have you submitted yourself to this difficult situation?
I think I was just awakened to the lie of it, and I do have 4 kids, so at one point I had 4 teenagers living in my house, so I'm okay about not being liked very much. And I think it's my duty because I've seen what is happening. I don't mind talking. I don't mind coming on and talking on the media. I don't mind talking in real life. I will challenge people in real life. You know, I literally will talk to people's faces and tell them that I think they're wrong. So I don't mind any of that. And there's many, many women who don't have the opportunity to do it, don't feel that they can do it, feel stifled and silenced by the state, you know, by this country and its arms of the judiciary and the police force. So I'm just not having it.
I know you're not having it. And by the way, every time I have you on, I get a lot of hate online as well on Twitter and everything. So I just want to stress that you're very brave, but I'm extremely brave as well. Would you agree with that, Kellie-Jay?
I do. For a testicle giver, I think you're extraordinarily brave.
No, I'm not, but you are, and it's extremely. I'm extremely glad to talk to you again. All the best, Kellie-Jay. Let's talk again soon. Kellie-Jay Keen from Standing for Women. I'm Kevin O'Sullivan. This is Talk TV.